Yes, the book of the year, folks. You got to get this. The Small Book of Sheep. For those of you that like sheep, or do you come from a place where people like sheep and the sheep are scared? Okay, folks, sorry, I had to do it. But any of you that have the Ram Super Deluxe box set know that amongst all the other beauties and goodies you can get inside there, you have to look up at the Book of Sheep. Okay? Just Paul with a bunch of sheep. Shearing the sheep, holding the sheep, petting the sheep. Yes, folks, the Book of Sheep. Yeah, for you people that like sheep out there, we got a Book of Sheep for you, huh? What do you think? All right, folks. Next episode is Ram. Matt Mangles McCartney. Yes, we're moving on to Ram. Okay, folks. Well, where did we leave off? In my first episode, we had left Paul in late 1970 when I finally got the McCartney album for Christmas or for the holidays. Well, 1971 kind of rolls in. I'm 9 years old, going on almost 10, going on 10. And first memory of this period is in early, I want to say winter, spring of 1971, okay? I heard Another Day on the radio, and I loved it. I don't know if I was in the car with my mom or with my dad. It had to be in the car, though. I don't think, well, they might have played the radio a little bit in the house, but I'm guessing it was the car. We were riding somewhere, and I heard Another Day, and I loved it, okay? Paul McCartney. Again, I want to reiterate something, folks. Up until this point, I still haven't gotten to the part yet of this story doing Matt Mangles McCartney where I finally realized that the Beatles have broken up. I still don't totally comprehend this or realize it, or haven't had anyone blurt it right out to me. So it's kind of like when you believe in Santa Claus, but then you get to that age where you kind of know there isn't a Santa Claus, but you don't want to admit it to yourself, or you haven't heard direct evidence that there isn't one, and you know it's kind of true that Santa doesn't exist. But come on, Santa does exist, right? In spirit, in our hearts, you know? All right, anyway. But it was kind of like that, you know? I kind of knew there was something up, but I didn't quite know what it was. And so I haven't got to the part of the story yet. That's coming in 1972, believe it or not, when I finally got confirmation. Can you believe it? Wait for that part in the next episode. Anyway, so here we are in early 71, winter, spring. I'm still pretty sure the Beatles are together. I'm just figuring that Paul's doing some stuff on his own. It's just that, you know, like he did with the McCartney album. It's like, well, that's Paul. He's still with the Beatles, but you know, like my cousin told me, he's doing something by himself, and it's great. Well, when I heard Another Day, that's what I figured. I was like, oh, that's Paul, and I was a big Paul fan even back then, and heard that song and just thought it was the bee's knees. I thought it was fantastic. Okay, so now my next memory of the Ram album is, let's go a few months later. It's around summer of 1971, maybe around August or so. And I had a friend named Roger. Now, Roger and I knew each other from when we were infants practically. My dad and his dad worked in the same job, at the same place. So they became friends through their job in the 50s. And obviously when my dad and mom got married in 1956, and Roger and his parents got married around that time, maybe a little earlier. I was born in 61, Roger was born in 62, I believe. So from the time we can remember when we were 2, 3 years old, you know, we were playmates, you know, because of the parents being friends. So this is going like years later now, almost 10 years later that I've known Roger since we were infants. It's summer of 71, I'm at Roger's house. We used to frequently go back and forth to each other's house. There'd be cookouts or gatherings or family get-togethers with friends and whatnot. And the cookout went great. It was a nice, you know, one of those fun summer cookouts, you know, with the food going and music and people drinking and having a good time. And the kids would play together, all the kids would get together. But I remember this specific moment. We were in the front of Roger's house, sitting on the steps with the two of us and several other kids. one of the kids, I don't know if it was a cassette player or an 8-track player, I can't remember, and was playing some music. I don't remember any of the other music. I don't know if it was this album. I don't know what it was. I just heard one song at that cookout, and it struck me. And it was Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey. And it came on and started playing. And I just was knocked out by it. Like I say, by this time I was 10 years old by that summer of 71. And I thought it was the greatest thing. And folks, I'm going to be honest with you, I thought it was the Beatles. No one told me any different. No one was really talking about the music that was playing. It just played. And I heard that song and I said, oh, that's the Beatles. That must be a new Beatles song. As I said, I didn't know they had officially broken up yet. And I loved it, folks. That song has stuck with me since that moment at that summer cookout in 1971. I have loved it. I can hear it. It never grows old for me. I can hear it on the Beatles channel 100 times in a row. I still love that song. And all the kids, you could tell, were into it as well. It was a very popular song and everybody loved it. That's my next big memory about this album. Now, the album itself, I wasn't too aware of at that moment. It wasn't till Christmas that year, 1971, that I finally got Ram. And let me tell you, folks, I'm going back to some of the things I said about McCartney. As that young 10-year-old boy, when my parents got me this for Christmas, I loved it right off the top, just like McCartney. To me, it was even better because, you know, to that young boy's ears, this was even more produced than McCartney. Let's be honest. It's still folksy, it's still rootsy, gritty rock and roll, very simple, very stripped down, but it's a little step up from the McCartney album, you know, for those 10-year-olds' ears. And I loved it. I thought this was the greatest thing. I still didn't understand this image yet. I had no idea what that meant. I just thought it was, you know, two little bugs wrestling. That's all I thought it was. It's Paul and his family. Another gatefold. Not as elaborate as the McCartney gatefold, which I fell in love with, but I still liked it. I thought these were, you know, cool pictures. Check them out. But it didn't have quite the impact as the gatefold on McCartney did. But boy, did I love this album. And to this day, folks, if you saw my ranking about 2 years ago, I think this came in at number 2, I believe, or was it number 1? I think it was number 2. And someday I'll do an updated ranking of Paul's albums, but it's right up there, folks. It's in my top echelon of Paul's albums to this day. It had such an impact on me when I got it that Christmas, and I've loved it ever since. I've gotten every format you could get of this album, the vinyl, I had the cassette. I think I had even the 8-track at one point in the 70s, but that's long gone. Never had the reel-to-reel, sorry. Obviously have the CD versions of this, and even got the Super Deluxe archive set a few years back, and I love it. It's one of my favorites of the series. It's just a great album, folks. I mean, you just, you know, do I need to tell you? Like I say, these videos, this series I'm doing is emotion and just stories and stuff, but it's not really a review, but again, like the McCartney album, like I said with that one, there is not one song on here I skip. I love everything on Ram. I don't want to even go through every song with you. You know the album. It's just unbelievable. It's so good. It's just, I could put it, it's like McCartney, 2 in a row for Paul. An album that I can put on right now. I don't care how many times I heard it. I don't care if I heard it yesterday. I can put this on right now, sit back, and I'm in heaven. Music, Beatles, McCartney heaven. It's just, I love this album so much. It's one of my top favorite, not just Paul and Beatles, albums of all time. I just love it. And I know it got slammed a little bit. I was a little too young to understand critics and all that stuff back then. But I know it got slammed a little bit by, you know, some of the critics in the day. But from what I understand, the feeling I get nowadays is this album over the last 49 years has just grown and grown and grown to the point, like, I think it's considered a classic at this point. Okay, a couple more little tidbits about this and then I'll get out of here for you with this episode of Matt Mangles McCartney. Is seeing Paul, I don't know what tour it was on. It might have been that 05 tour when he really changed up the set list. I know on the 93 tour he did Another Day. knocked me out. That was the first time I'd ever heard Paul do Another Day live. And I know it's not on this album, but it's from the sessions, and I loved it. Loved it when he did that. But it was another tour where he did Too Many People. It might have been the '05 tour, you can help me. And he announced it as for you Wings fans, which it really isn't a Wings album, let's be honest. We don't get that till the next one. But Paul said, this is for all the Wings fans. And they did Too Many People, and the place went nuts. You know, it was just fantastic. But he nailed it. And I have to say that one of my favorites on this album is the Epic closer. Oh, well, near close. Yeah, it's a closer. The Backseat of My Car. That is probably my favorite song on this album. Don't get me wrong, I love all the other songs. So if you have a different favorite, believe me, it's right up there for me. I love everything on this album. But the Backseat of My Car, that big epic, is my favorite. All right, folks. Thanks again. Bless you all. Bye-bye. See you for the next episode of Matt